Hello and welcome to this video on the Bodhicaryavatara, chapter 7, verse 4. As usual, I will read the verse out slowly in Sanskrit twice, and then we'll proceed with the analysis. And I'll share my screen with you and bring up the analytical text. I'll get myself out of the way. Klesha vagurikagrata pravishto janma vaguram kimadyapi na janasi mrityor vedanamagata. Klesha vagurikagrata pravishto janma vaguram kimadyapi na janasi mrityor vedanam agata. Now the analysis of the declension. Klesha vagurikagrata is a compound. It's M1S, that's the masculine nominative singular. It refers to you in the singular. Pravishto, equally an adjective, a past participle adjective, masculine nominative singular. Janma vaguram, the birth trap. Vagura is meaning trap, is a feminine noun ending in a long a, and this is the accusative case, so that's F2S, feminine accusative singular. And the next line, you see three indeclinables. Actually, it's four indeclinables, really, because the adyapi is a merger by Santhi of adya api. So if it was written out in full, there would be four consecutive indeclinables. Kim, adya, api, na. Janasi, 2SA, that's the second singular active, that's the you singular active. PRE for present. Mrityor vadanam agata. Mrityor, with O and Visarga, that's the subdotted H, Mrityor, becomes Mrityor, being followed by a voiced consonant. That's a M6S, that is masculine for Mrityu, masculine, meaning death, masculine genitive singular. Vadanam, it's a neuter noun, accusative singular, and as you know, the nominative and the accusative in neuters is always the same. So nominative vadanam, accusative unchanged vadanam. Agata, that's come as a past participle, adjectival past participle. Again, masculine nominative singular. Note again that where a compound is declined, it's only ever the last element of the compound that changes to show the number and case. All of the elements of the compound before the last member are in their stem form. That is almost always the case. There are occasional cases where it doesn't happen, but for the most part, that's how it is. That's why klesha in its stem form, vagurika, well, you don't see it here because it's merged with vagurikagrata, but if the sandhi was resolved, it would be klesha stem form, vagurika stem form, then agrata in its declined form. Now it's a masculine singular form rather than stem form because it's the last member of the compound. Pravishto, the word standing on its own, masculine singular, and then janma vaguram. Janma meaning birth, a neuter noun meaning birth, but because it's part of a compound, a prior or falling before the last member of the compound, it remains in its stem form. So janma vaguram, and the last word in the compound vaguram declines. Now, let's look at the meaning of this. So agrata, the root gra, I will now share my iPad screen with you. Pause for a moment. So going through the words, what I'll do, rather than go through the order as they appear in the original Sanskrit, just for convenience, I'll go through the words in the order in which they appear in my parallel text analysis. That's the one beginning with agrata. So agrata, it's from the root gra, meaning to smell. Agra, in this can mean to kiss as well, but in this context it means to agra, to smell onto, the agra. They're smelling onto it, sniffing out. The imagery is like hunting dogs sniffing out their prey. So look at this imagery here. The klesha vagurika, the defilement trappers, that is the trappers, the hunters that are the defilements. It's equating the defilements to hunters. You have been sniffed out by them. So you are defilement hunter sniffed. In other words, sniffed out, smelt out by these trappers that are the defilements. And the past participle of agra is regular. There's agra added followed by ta, making the past participle sniffed out. That's the stem form I've written on the screen here, and in the masculine singular, it's agrata. Klesha in Sanskrit, in older Sanskrit, actually means more of an affliction. You are afflicted by something. Something bad has happened to you. That was the original meaning of the word. And then in Buddhist usage, that word affliction then came to mean an inner defilement, is how it's often translated, within you. And if you were aklishta, using the past participle, the klishta or aklishta, you were afflicted by something. And klesha, the klesha, is of course the same as the word we know well in Pali, which is kilesa. Vagura means a trap, as in a trap that one sets for animals, if you're a hunter or a trapper. So vagura, and a trapper, one who sets traps, is a vagurika. You very often find with these compounds ending in a past participle of a transitive verb, as here, agrata, sniffed, sniffed out. If it appears at the end of a compound, then the preceding words are often what are effectively the instrumental of that past participle, meaning sniffed out by the trappers. Now, pravishto, from the root vish, meaning to enter. Vish. This word is most commonly used with the verbal prefix pra. So pra. Pravish, pravishati, meaning to enter. In many cases, the verbal prefixes hugely alter or develop or expand or in other ways change the basic meaning of the verb, of the root. In many cases, they don't make any real difference. You just learn them as you go along. This is one of those cases, pravishati, where the addition of the pra doesn't really make any difference to the meaning. And in fact, as I said, it's far more common to see pravishati rather than just vishati. And the past participle is pravishta. Now note, a sh plus a t both become retroflex. That's why I'm putting the dots in now. Pravishta. So pravishta. It means entered. So the past participle is like a stative past participle, means in a state of having entered. Like when we say somebody is, in slightly substandard English, somebody is stood, meaning he stood there and remained standing. He is stood. By the way, in Sanskrit, to talk about somebody being sthito is not substandard, it's perfectly normal. So, klesha vagurikagrata pravishto janma vaguram. Now, the masculine singular form, pravishta, and the becomes o, followed by a voiced consonant. And here the voiced consonant in question is the j, pravishto janma vaguram. Janma, meaning birth. We saw in the, I think it was in the last verse, upajayate. That's right, you see the alasyam upajayate, sloth arises from this root jan. And it makes the present jayate. It's an atmanepada verb. We'll come to more of that later. But it makes its verbal noun in janma. There are many roots that make a verbal noun by adding a ma from the root, dri. We strengthen the r to get an r, and that's where we get the word dharma. And from the root kri, doing the same as we do with tri, to dri, dharma, kri, karma. So janma, janta janma, is a verbal noun formed in exactly the same way as dharma, karma. They're very common. So, sniffed out by these defilements, the trappers, you have entered into the janmavaguram, into the birth trap, the trap of birth. Kimadyapi na janasi, this is like an exasperated question. Do you still not get it? Can you still not see? Kim adyapi na janasi. Mrityor badanamagata. So kim, I told you at the beginning, I've marked it here as an indeclinable. Kim has more than one usage. Here as a question marker, a question particle, treated as an indeclinable. Though of course as a declinable pronoun it goes ko, ka, kim, kasya, kasmai, and all of those things. So in this usage, I should emphasize, marking a question, it's treated as an indeclinable. So adya, adya is from that adya, that root dies, Latin dies, Latin for today. Hodie literally means on this day. Hodie, and adya is from that same origin. So it means today, but also it means right now. So adya api, api even. So adya api, adyapi, even now. The idea is, have you even now? Have you still not got it? Kim adyapi na janasi. Janasi, root, well known. Na, meaning to know. From cognate, of course, with our English, the j and the nya are cognate with our English know. Greek gnosis, and so on. Sorry, nya with a long nya is what is known as a 9th class verb. We needn't pause too long on that for the moment, but I'll just explain briefly. I'll start a new page. Ninth class verb, it means that there's an infixed, or put in the middle, the syllable na in the present system. So, for example, take the verb kri, meaning to sell. It's not krimi, but it's kri nami. Nasi, and so on. So na is a 9th class verb that behaves in the same way. So you'd expect to see nyaname, but you don't. What happens is it would, as if it was behaving regularly as a 9th class verb, nyanami. But what happens is, this ny drops out in the present conjugation. So that's why you get janami, and then janasi. Janasi, second singular, thou knowest, you know. So najanasi, you do not know. Kimadyapi, even now do you not know. Or have you still not got it? Mrityor vadanam agata. Now, mrityu is from the root mri, meaning to die. Cognate, you know, with mors, mortality. Actually, it's also our English word moor, as in wild land, also comes from that same root. The idea being it's dead land. It's not good for cultivation, just rough grass that sheep can graze, but not good cultivating land. That's called the moor, the dead land. So one way of forming a verbal noun from ri is to put chu, mrichu. I'll just write it in Pali here. In Pali it becomes machu. Sorry, mrichu. Slightly muff that. With me, come on. Mrichu, which is mors, mortis. So mrichu, and it's a masculine noun ending in an u. So the genitive, as normal, this is regular, becomes an o, mrityo, with the visarga, and the o with visarga before another word beginning with a voiced consonant becomes or. That's why it's mrityor vadanam, mrityor vadanamagata. There is a distinction, by the way, in Sanskrit. This word means death. From the same root, we have marana, that you will also have seen. And what constitutes dukkha includes jara, marana, old age and death, or decay and death, but not deaths. It's actually dying. So just as in English we can make a distinction between death and dying, death meaning the actual state of being dead, the opposite of life, that's just mrityu. By contrast, marana is more the process of dying. That's why you have these retreats on death and dying. status of being dead, facing the death of somebody else, and dying, the actual going through the process of transiting from life to death. So death and dying, in that sense, are exactly reflected in the Sanskrit mrityu, death, and marana, dying. Mrityor vadanamagata. Agata. You know this already from words like tathagata, root gum, past participle. You'd expect to see ganta. Again, I'm writing these asterisks just to indicate that this is a form that does not exist, a wrong form, a non-existent form that I'm giving you for illustrative purposes only. What happens is that the nasal drops out and we have gata. Gate, gate, parangate, so on. Prefix, verbal prefix a, and in this verb it reverses the meaning. So gata, gone, agata, come. Rather like da, give, ada, to take. The adinna, adana, the adana, the taking of the adinna, the ungiven. Mrityor vadanam agata. Vadana, it's from there's the root vad, to say, and it's a slightly odd formation, this, and grammatically regular. So vadanam, and neuter noun, originally means saying, and then by extension means mouth, and sometimes even means face, actually. So here, mrityor madanam agata, agata, come, mrityor vadanam, into the mouth, the vadanam, mrityor, of death. You'll see in mrityor vadanam agata, it would have been linguistically correct to make the whole thing a compound, like this, mrityu vadanam. Just death mouth, meaning the mouth of death. But it's optional. You can resolve it and decline mrityu, which is done here as a separate word, in which case it becomes mrityor vadanam. Of death, the mouth. It is far, far more common in Sanskrit and Pali that if you want to say the something of something else, the genitive comes first. So we wouldn't say, and you could in rare circumstances, but it is rare, you wouldn't normally say vadanam mrityo, which we would in English, the mouth of death. We say of death, the mouth, is a far more common construction. So let me just check that we can wind this up now. Yes, one point I will make is, we're seeing it again and again, the omission of the verb to be in an equational sentence. So A is B, you are come. You are come into the mouth of death, mrityor vadanam agata. You can leave out the is there. It's understood. It's not incorrect. It's happening the whole time. So there we are. I will just read through this verse again slowly twice in Sanskrit, and I recommend that I'll stop the screen share now. I recommend that you just listen, try to treat this now as purely oral, just listen to it being recited and attempt to follow as I go along. Kleshava gurika grata pravishto janmavaguram kimadyapi na janasi mrityor vadanamagata. And once more. Klesha-vagurikagrata pravishto janmavaguram kimadyapi na janasi mrityor badanam agata. Good, and that's it for chapter 7, verse 4. Before I go, one thing I omitted to say, I hope you're still with me, this use of the, and I've got my shared screen back here, this usage of putting the word in the genitive first, so the mouth of death in Sanskrit, Mrityuravadanam. Of course, I forgot to say, we're doing this in English naturally the whole time, because if we say the mouth of death, the mouth, we could never say of death the mouth, it's the mouth of death. However, when we use the apostrophe S form, it always comes first. So if we, for example, if we wanted to say death's mouth, we could never say mouth deaths. That's wrong. It doesn't exist in English. The genitive form, death's mouth, has to come first. So there we are. The way it's being done in Sanskrit and indeed in Latin is the more common way of doing it. And Pali, of course, it's exactly the same word order that we use in English if we use the apostrophe S form. Okay, that's it now. That's the end of this video.